All right, folks, welcome back to Dirty Boots Capital. Today we have a very awesome guest with us here today. He is my friend, Brian Muka. He is known as the Freedom Sherpa, and he wrote this great book right here called Your Secret SuperPower, Tame Fear to Thrive. So, Brian, welcome to Dirty Boots Capital.
Honored to be here, brother.
Yeah, this is awesome. So for the audience, for the listeners out there, I've known Brian for about 2 years now. He's helped me think through different concepts, overcome some of my own personal fears in terms of all the different stuff that I've been working on, which is super hard. So when I talk about fear, when I talk about doing different things and going outside your comfort zones, I'm not talking like BS. I know it. I live it. And so Brian has helped me immensely. When he told me he had a book out there, I ran to Amazon. I got it. I read it. And I said, Brian, I got to have you on the show because this is so awesome. And so I'm just going to read from the back of it, just a little intro to who Brian is. So former special operations officer in the U.S. Navy, Brian Muka is leading a movement and company called Freedom Sherpa, committed to guiding people to take command of fear and make it work for them. Brian Muka, the Freedom Sherpa, gets results. And you do. Brian, again, welcome. Thank you for being here. You're a successful author, successful entrepreneur, also a speaker. You're on stage talking about these different things, freedom and fear. What else? What don't you do?
Opera. I don't do opera.
Oh, okay.
Appreciate it as an art form, but I do not participate nor listen to opera.
Yeah.
What else? I guess mediocrity. It's a daily struggle between like living the principles of Freedom Sherpa and being a coward, almost breath by breath. It's a choice. So,
and you have a pretty awesome background. I mean, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background in terms of your military experience and where you came from there? And because that all really led up to this Freedom Sherpa movement and to the book. It inspired you. So let's talk a little bit about all of that, because I think that's going to resonate with a lot of viewers and a lot of listeners because they come with that background as well.
I'm going to go 2 events before that. So I didn't just arrive in Navy Special Operations. It starts when I was about 8 years old. I had a father. He had the first internet on the block. He had the video camera, and he was doing NLP, neurolinguistic programming, before anybody knew what that was.
Yeah.
So I, every weekend I'd go with him as he would train, and I'd participate at 8, 9, 10, 12 years old. And so I started learning the power of language and imagination. Also at 8, I started playing baseball. My dad was a track star. He didn't know how to throw the ball back and forth. He tells a lovely story, but when I was 8, he played baseball like a 12-year-old. And we're having a catch one day, and he was like moving out of the way to catch it. Like, Dad, what are you doing? He goes, I don't want to get in front of the ball. I don't want to get hurt. I'm like, you got to get in front of it. He goes, what if it hits me? I'm like, to my doctor of a father, I said, Dad, don't be stupid. That's what you have reactions for. And I'm telling you that story because my dad was willing to learn from his 8-year-old. So I was safe to express and share and be taught and teach at a very young age. So
and also it's a great metaphor for, what we as entrepreneurs deal with each and every day. I mean, we got to get in front of the ball and
scary.
It's scary.
It's scary.
And sometimes it hits us. And so it's a great metaphor of of the conversation to come here.
So that's context 1. Context 2, I spent a lot of time on stage. I grew up playing the piano. They called us the Von Muka family. And I knew that when I got to Hamilton High School West, I was going on the Bahamas trip with the band. There's no piano in a marching band, Tony. So I came in, I auditioned a bunch of instruments, and, I learned the trumpet. And over the course of 4 years, I would become the first chair trumpet player. I was Tony in West Side Story. And the point of that is I was on stage a lot, and it was nauseating. Like, I got such terrible stage fright. I could still execute, but it was my junior year. And I was like, wait a minute, what if I rewrote? I don't know how I got to this, but the gist of this was, what if I changed the story around the butterfly pit in my stomach to like, oh, what if this is the feeling I get before I do something awesome?
Yeah, I love that.
That was 11th grade. So I was 16 for that. And then right about that time, I was discerning a calling to either go to the United States Naval Academy to fly jets. And I kind of lost my way. And that same year, I went to New Jersey Boys State, and I watched this veteran, World War II guy, Walker. He hobbled over to a piece of trash somebody carelessly threw away. And no kidding, like this long to bend over, pick it up, and then hobble over the trash can. And I was in tears, bro. Like, that guy went to war. That wasn't enough. Buried his buddies. That wasn't enough. Came back. They fundraised for New Jersey Boys State at Rider University to train the watch. Who was coming next? And it was me. Send me. And I'm like moved to tears right now as I tell you that.
Yeah.
And at that time, I thought that was the greatest good I could do for the greatest amount of people was, serving in the cloth of the nation. So fast forward a little bit, I went to Drexel University on an ROTC scholarship. I wanted to run nuclear power plants underwater in a submarine. As a kid, I wanted to be a steely-eyed missile man and travel through space at 5 miles a second. And, I read every single book I could get my hands on, rocket propulsion and Werner von Braun and Gene Kranz and all of the heroes that were 33 years old. Just keep that in mind. Landed men on the moon at 33, right?
Yeah.
I spent 28 days attached to the USS Olympia, fast attack submarine. I had the coolest summer cruise in the entire Navy. I flew from Philly to LA, to Hawaii, to Guam, to Saipan. Saipan is one of the most beautiful places I'd ever been. We spent 5 days on the beach before I even saw the boat. And then we spent 5 days underwater. And I was quickly cured of my desire to be a submarine officer, hundreds of feet, thousands of feet under the surface of the ocean. Yep. And it was right about that time, my friend, mentor at the time, class advisor, Lieutenant Sean Simmons, started doing something called EODPT. Lots of acronyms. Navy loves TLAs, 3-letter abbreviations, explosive ordnance disposal. And I loved the way it sucked. It was hard. And I was like, I have no business going to that. He's like, dude, you just did 60 miles on your bike Saturday and didn't think twice about it. This is your group. So I kept showing up and he believed in me a little more than I did. We put a plan together. My dad was working at Lockheed Martin, teaching Lean Six Sigma. I got to meet the lieutenant commander out of Norfolk, running Naval Academy midshipmen through the summer special operations cruise. It was only for the Naval Academy. I was the first Navy ROT midshipman to go through that. 2 weeks, blowing shit up, jumping out of helicopters. It was all because I learned how to network. He's like, come to the training. I'm like, all right, how do I do that? He goes, get orders. So I go to my command at University of Pennsylvania. Hey, I'm going to go do the summer training. I need orders. They're like, we're not writing you orders. I'm like, what if you did no cost orders and I paid for it? Tony, it was the best $439 I'd ever spent. I paid for my lodging. I paid for my food. Got to blow up flare pods from the F-14. We jumped out of helicopters and it was like being James Bond. I remember being in the lean and rest, just feeling like I want to earn my rigger's belt. Like that was my equivalent of like a black belt, but in special operations. So I came home, I lit every single candle in church and I begged God, Lord, if this is possible, help me become a special operations officer. And I was selected, one of 17 that year to go do this mission.
That's phenomenal. What I walk away from, that background, and thank you. Thank you for your years of service, and thank you for sharing that story and the emotion that comes with it.
It was my honor.
Because it really does. What it points out is you're a man who very much cares about our freedoms, hence the Freedom Sherpa. I mean, you've lived it, you know it very well, firsthand, being overseas, being in different places, being in, scary situations, and then coming back home and seeing what we have here at home and the opportunities that are available to us. I mean, this is what we talk about on this channel. We talk a lot about freedom, and that's why I want to have you on. A lot of folks, they think freedom just happens. I have an analogy that I use where people, it's almost like they think of freedom as walking into a casino and they pull down the arm of a slot machine, and whatever shows up, those are the freedoms they get. I don't want them to treat freedom that way. I want them to treat freedom more as like a game of blackjack. It's more strategic, right? Looking at the hand that you're dealt, right? That hand of cards that you're dealt, and playing that strategically to enhance your freedoms. It's very much a participation sport. You understand that so incredibly well. And you also understand fear incredibly well.
Let me share one idea, Tony, while we're on that topic.
Yeah, please.
Very recently did I realize that freedom can never be given. It can only be claimed. I can give you the opportunity and the space for freedom, but like I have the choice. I got home last night at 1:15. My day starts at 5:45. I had the freedom to sleep in. I also had the freedom to get after it, right? And continue to work this crusade, right? So just a little silly example of it can only be claimed.
Yeah, I ask the audience and the listeners to think about that. Give that some deep thinking in terms of how are you approaching freedom? Are you just waiting it to be bestowed upon you? Or are you going out there and getting after it, as Brian says, right?
And we have the opportunity here in the United States, especially me in Florida. It has been bestowed. And there's people in North Carolina, North Korea, China, South America. They spend tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to just get to the start line that we already have. And they make fun of us. Look at this lazy piece of shit working at Subway. I'm not talking shit on Subway, and that's your hustle.
No, not I get you. Yeah, there's so many opportunities. People, they just overlook it. It's and so why do you think people don't get after it? Let's get into maybe the fair component of things, right? Why don't people get after it?
Okay, so let's talk macro first. I'm a huge fan of hard times make hard men. And I mean men in this, like I'm the
Yeah.
divine masculine, the ability to say fucking no.
Yeah.
And apply that where appropriate, based on our compass, right?
Yeah.
1960, maybe earlier, maybe 1914. We could talk about Rockefeller and taking out financial education and holistic medicine in 1914. But also there was a movement to remove financial education from schools.
Yep.
Right. So at a macro level, we have been conducting the most incredible psychological warfare that the world has ever known, teaching our men that you are not enough. You will never be enough. And you're lucky to get whatever we give you. It's everywhere. It's in the news. It's in school. It's a low pass filter for what is no longer possible. So why try? At a micro level, we live in the most abundant time in history, like ever.
Yep.
Right. Medium income, comfort, all that. We have comfort. But again, hard times make hard men, easy times make weak men. And Naval Reykjavik has a quote, hard choices, easy life, easy choices, hard life. And I don't think a lot of people are going out of their way to be really uncomfortable. Yeah. I mean, the 100-pound sandbag walk on the beach. I mean, the CrossFit workouts. I mean, picking up the phone or asking the beautiful woman out on a date. We're not building the resiliency muscle. I think there's a lack of good men teaching and also like holding a standard. Right. The masculine love is I love you and your batting swing sucks. Let's go to the batting cage, but I love you. Yeah. Right. There's a lack of integrity, and it takes a village to raise a young man, young women too. Right. But I don't know that world as well as I know the plight of a, alpha male today.
Yeah. And the
we forget our birthright to be co-creators. And, in my world, if you want to use the word God, quantum, universe, creation, we get to mine the rocks and the weeds. Like we are having active participation in its facilitation of heaven on earth.
On this channel, we've discussed in the past, the past how, we have this demise of the family unit where, unfortunately it's too easy to get divorced these days instead of working hard to keep it together. And as a result of that ease of divorce, we have young men, boys who are growing up with their moms. They're fortunate to have their loving moms, and that's all greatness, but they lack that father figure in their life to be the example, how to be a strong man. And also, for the young girls out there living with mom, and not to speak in generalities, right? I mean, obviously there's all types of different situations, but in this particular situation, you have young girls who are living with mom who aren't seeing what a real man should be in that family unit, taking care of mom and kids. And exactly.
What she deserves in her value, because her dad teaches her that.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's this whole dynamic going on that is just conditioning us further. It started 100 years ago, and it's just plaguing us. And so this is where we want to talk about different things. We want to talk about fear. We want to talk about mindset. We want to talk about leaning in to having freedom, achieving our freedoms. Don't wait for somebody to give it to you. Actually go after it. And so this is super important for us to really understand what's going on, like Brian says, at the macro level and then also at the micro level, because there's so many things that are eating away at this very fundamental principle of freedom. I'm going to come back to the question of fear. Why do you think people are not going after it? Like you say, in terms of freedom, going after greater freedoms, what's preventing them from doing that?
It depends. Like that's a nebulous sort of topic, right? So again, a couple of different lanes we can talk about. We start like with trauma, right? There could be brain injury, there could be sexual trauma, those types of things. And getting back to a safe baseline where it's challenging right now as men to know that you have intrinsic value, yet you must perform today. Like we're teaching men that you're perfect and your feelings matter, and they do matter. I'm not saying to push that shit down, but like there's just times to put the war helmet on, and we see this like Lambo private jet Instagram lifestyle. Like you're only seeing the last little bit, the last half a percentage, but like that person, woman or man, gave themselves permission to suck. And over time they suck less. And like the success is not the way that it's portrayed. Like just wrapping my mind around like success is standing on top of a mountain of failure. Time a little better. So permission to experiment and permission to fail, right?
We talk so much, so many times about like part of the process of being an entrepreneur is obviously you're going to have some successes along the way. You need to be obviously successful, but along the way there are just inherent failures. And you have to lean into that. You have to know that those failures are going to be there. That's
Great.
just something you need to know. But in terms of, you mentioned like social media, where it's Lambos and to the moon, and man, I don't know what it would be like as a teenager today to grow up with social media, see some of these things and how that would make young people potentially feel so inadequate and just
Yes.
create this fear of I'm not good enough, right? And so I want to talk a little bit about that in terms of, you and I have spoken about it in the past, in terms of, we start with this small little inkling of a story in our head. It starts one day, the next day we wrap another story around it as to why we're not good enough. And then the next day we add more to it, right? You're shaking your head because, because
Live it
you're
every
so
day.
familiar, and I'm familiar
I
with this
wrestle
story.
every single day with my unworthiness sparring partner. And it
Right?
wasn't until really recently that I realized that the unworthiness is my ice bath.
Say more about that. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So when does cold become hot? When does poor become rich? When do tears of sadness become tears of joy? When does evil become good? See how that's all a continuum and there's a polarity to it all? It's like the Batman symbol. Like there's no Batman symbol without the shadow. And
Yeah.
and all of my work centers on the Viktor Frankl. Look, his quote about the space between stimulus and response is the only freedom, and it's our freedom to choose. What do I do with that? Do I pull in the main sheet and go faster when unworthiness shows up? Sometimes. Do I like lose my mind and melt down and have a complete breakdown? Sometimes. But the breakdown happens less frequently because it's like in shooting. DOPE stands for data on previous engagements. So every time I spar with unworthiness, I'm getting reps and I'm getting time in the cockpit. I'm getting to understand the adversary that lives in my fucking mind. Right. So in the words of the Matrix, we're in a war for our minds. Here's the dichotomy. Either everything in a 12.9 billion light year universe is perfectly placed, perfectly manifesting, and not a single electron or quanta is out of place, or it's all going to end in a fiery explosion. Should have happened already, right? So I live in the world where everything's perfectly placed. So if I logically know that and ask this next question, what's out of place? The answer unequivocally and without pause is nothing, not even me. That's the job. So ice baths, workouts, calls, becoming an entrepreneur, in the words of Jim Rohn, decide to become a millionaire, not for the money, but for the person I must become. And I would challenge that language to the person I must remember I already am.
Yeah.
And that's the illusion.
And so again, I want to bring it back to, so the viewers and the audience out there that's listening to this, this is some like deep level shit we're talking about here. This all goes back to, if you have fears, if you have told your story, yourself a story years ago, and you've been doing nothing but, wrapping another story around it, another story, and it may be just to make you feel good that, I didn't do this last year. And look, the stock market is coming down. And look how smart I was a year ago for not investing, or whatever it may have been, right? You may be feeding in to those fears.
And the victim is a huge idea right now, right?
Yeah.
So either all of this bad shit happened to me.
Yeah.
And
we got a lot of that.
It's hard. And I'm not taking anything away from that. The story is hard and I'm harder. That's the choice.
That's the mindset.
And so the opposite end of victim-itis is mea culpa. Everything that happens in my life is my fault, my responsibility.
Yeah.
The divorce, the running out of money, the early end of my Navy career. Like I did that. Yeah. I did it. And it makes the medicine go down easier because then it sets up Napoleon Hill's quote, in every setback, find the seed of equal or greater success. That's my job. In the failure, I get to find the lesson.
Yeah.
That's the gift. I've already paid the price. Why not extract the treasure, the wisdom?
Yeah. Yeah, and so it leads me down the path of something you teach in your book here, Your Secret Superpower, right? Tame Fear to Thrive. One of the exercises you walk through in this book here is actually writing a letter to fear.
Oh, oh,
That was like when I read that, I like got goosebumps because I had never heard of anything like that. And so, like, what made you think of that? And like, walk us through, like, what is it? Writing a letter to fear? Why you want people to do that? Just walk us through what that's all about.
so if I could separate my I am, the divine being that I believe that I am, versus my thoughts. The whole reason why people meditate is to watch the inner monologue. Extrapolated that out to fear.
Yeah.
And I made an outside thing. But then instead of just like, oh my gosh, a lot of fear, and I always get my ass kicked, to like, no, no, no. Fear is actually there to dare me to greatness. And in the dark arts, black magic, if we can have love and gratitude for the thing, it's a really unstable energy. So if I can love that too, it loses its power. It's like the quote, if you laugh at the devil, he shall surely run away. So if I hate fear, I'm avoiding fear, I'm pushing it down, I'm pivoting, and I don't address it, it still is operating in my subconscious, right? It's the Carl Jung, until the subconscious becomes conscious, it will rule my life and I will call it fate.
So the start of that conversation starts with having to identify what you're fearful of. What is that fear? In the actual motion of, this is like the old Marie Montessori, what the hand does, the mind remembers,
For sure.
where it's when you actually have to pick up a pen or a pencil and actually write what your fear is, writing that letter to fear, you actually have to be mentally like engaged in saying, okay, what actually is my fear?
Mhm.
And then you start to unravel, like we were talking about that onion, that layers of fear that you originally, built over years around one small little nugget, one small little thought that you had. And the next day you built something more and something more and something more. By writing this letter to fear, you actually break down those layers of the onion and actually get to really the center, the core of what your fear is. And once
Mhm.
you understand what that fear is, now you can actually do something.
Yeah,
And
I
so I
agree.
felt that was a powerful story in the book. And I'd gone through your book and I'd highlighted so many sections, but one of the sentences that I highlighted that I thought was pretty powerful was you had said, "I am grateful for blindness because through it, a vision of success for my life was born." That just like blows my mind because, at that point, it's like, we're so vulnerable, we're so unencumbered by this blindness that's created around us, we're unencumbered by things, by thoughts. We're in that state of meditation where we can actually have that vision of success. What we're talking about here, again, for the audience, we're just touching on, just some of the concepts in Brian's book here, but
Mm.
there's so much more to go into.
Could I
So yeah,
could
go
I
ahead.
ask, could I ask a favor from the audience? And just as you're listening to this, I feel nervous and I feel fear coming on in this next request of you as you listen to this. This is participatory.
Yeah.
And I'm feeling my heart rate increase. And I'm with it. I'm with the fear. And I want to read to you my letter to fear. And I haven't looked at my book in maybe 2 years. I haven't read this in years.
Mm.
And this is a very full circle moment. And so for our veterans and if you have trauma or PTSD, it's really powerful to share your story and be held. And so I just ask you to hold me in this. And I'm nervous, excited also about the gift you're about to give me as I read you just a little bit of my scribblings and a powerful tool that Tony has found. And this is chapter 5. Today is a momentous day. Mark this date on your calendar because we are putting fear to work for us today. What I've come to know is that we are the CEOs of our lives, and it's appropriate to do some hiring today. Dear Fear, thank you for serving me all these years. I apologize to you that I misunderstood your role and where your skills are best suited. I allowed you to run amok and steal things from me because you thought it was keeping me safe. Because of my misunderstanding in our relationship, I didn't know that I needed to take a leadership role in managing such a powerful ally. You stepped up to protect us when I didn't. It's my turn to take command. I have the con fear, you are relieved. I value your input as a trusted advisor. You are my coach. You help me see what's important, and today I am blessed to decide which course my ship goes. My life is going in a different direction. I'd like to build courage and trust, discomfort as my teacher on my path to growth and realizing my fullest potential. I still need you, but in a different role. A ship in the harbor is safe, but that is not what ships are built for. Fear, please understand that my life is meaningful. In order to affect the world and the world around me, I choose to be uncomfortable for the bliss, the truth, and exhilaration on the other side of my nervousness, anxiety, and worry. I choose to listen to you in times of terror because I know you will save my life and guide me back to safety. When it comes to worry, that has never been your area of expertise. I choose today to put my language, imagination, mind into attracting what I truly desire, which is my life's purpose. I will stop using my imagination and language to create tragedies that aren't real. If I confuse worry for terror, which feels the same, I cannot give you the attention you deserve in emergencies. I choose to use my language to articulate what I want, not what I'm trying to avoid. I will now use my imagination to work through the kinks, which is an area I'm trusting you with. But please know, I will use my powers of visualization to attract and practice the outcomes I would like, as opposed to the old way of visualizing the worst possible outcomes. With these practices, I seek dominion of my mind. I get to change my beliefs, which changes the way I see the world and the story I use to explain events. As a careful curator of language and thought, I am prioritizing you for your true mission and purpose, which is to guide me through moments of terror and show me where the danger lies. I no longer ask or need you to be ever present, only appear during times of danger.
Powerful.
God
Yeah,
bumps.
that's powerful stuff. And I thank you and I appreciate you reading that very intimate view into your world. I know you come with a lot of history, a lot of experiences. This is pretty powerful stuff. And again, these are just little snippets from the book. I just wrote down as you were reading that a couple of things I felt really powerful, just as sound bites. Use fear as an ally, not as the leader, in order to achieve your life's purpose. So fear is just an ally. It's not the leader in this equation. It's not the leader, but also it forces us to understand what our life purpose is. And Brian and I have had many conversations about this, right? To be the best men we can be, to be the best human being we can be, to serve others. Brian has a very strong need and desire to serve others. Much of what he does and I do is not for monetary gain, right? Like these YouTube videos. This is there for you, the audience, right? Brian and I do not make anything off of this, and we're okay with that because we have this need to serve and bring you more powerful thoughts to help you achieve greatness within yourself, you know?
The greatness that's already there. It's just dormant in a lot of cases.
Yes,
Our
thank you.
roles that help you remember what is already your birthright.
Yeah, thank you. No, I appreciate that. There's so much in this book, and I wish I could go through all my highlighted sections that I have here. But tell us a little bit about where folks can learn more about you, where folks can pick up the book. If they're interested in picking it up, is it available on Barnes & Noble, Amazon, all that sort of jazz?
Yeah, so I self-published on Amazon with Kiwi Publishing. Kim Elay, thank you for the 4,633 track changes and a rewrite to bring you this book.
Yeah.
I share that with just a little bit of embarrassment, actually, because I've learned a lot since I wrote that in 2018. There was a running out of money and there was a going through a divorce, which helped me even distill further what I teach. And the biggest adjustment has been don't spare too much time looking at fear because the power of our regard, whatever we look at grows. The observation of the thing is its change. So notice fear, safety check, jump in the ice, pick up the phone, ask the person out, ask for the raise, right? Like that's the job and it's uncomfortable and I never want to do it and do it anyway, right? Because the amount of fear is equal or a little less than the amount of exhilaration. Otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah.
You know, so it's this amazing like scavenger hunt in life. Like, what if we came to Earth and we're like, oh, it's just an illusion? What fun would that be?
Yeah,
right.
It wouldn't.
So we created this game and there's these artifacts like Tony along the way to highlight, hey, this is pretty valuable. Can you show this for my audience? And just look for the omens, you know, the artifacts. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Brian Muka. I'm there. And then if you want to pick up a copy of the book, I wrote it for you. If you're going through an avalanche, that's what I wrote it for. It turned out to be more about like catharsis about helping me through my avalanche, but it's a good insight if someone in your family or your group of friends, your colleague, catastrophic injury, loss of their dream job, divorce,
Yeah.
those three things.
Yeah.
It's a good insight into how do I hold space and not meddle with somebody's life changing. I'm becoming a butterfly from the caterpillar, right? If I open the cocoon too soon,
Yeah.
it wrecks the butterfly's ability to fly.
Yeah.
So how do you hold space and also be compassionate? That's what this book is about. So it's on Amazon. Type in Brian Muka in Amazon. You get yourself a copy.
Yeah, and give Brian a follow on LinkedIn as well. Super great stuff. I love, you know, how you wrote the book in it more of a storytelling fashion. It makes it super easy to read, super easy to pick up, put down, pick up, put down, right? So for folks who are worried about, oh my God, this is going to be like all kind of technical stuff, it's not. It's a very much story book format. So I truly enjoyed it. So Brian, thank you so much for your time here today. I appreciate you. And I hope I get to see you again real soon because I always enjoy our conversations. So thanks for
Likewise.
being on today.
My pleasure, brother. Thank you for having me. And thanks guys for listening.
Yeah, if you enjoyed this conversation, hit the like button and hit the subscribe and send it off to your friends. It's super important to get this message out. I mean, Brian and I don't do this for ourselves. We truly do these videos for you. So please, if you know somebody in need who's having issues with, you know, mindset or fear or something where you think this will help them in some way, I mean, shoot, just what do you got to lose? Send it over to them. Hopefully it helps them. That's why we do it. So thanks for everybody for watching. We appreciate you all out there. Thank you.